My name is Nkechi Obi. I wear several hats. I'm CEO of Sport Nigeria. That's where I'm sitting. Sport Nigeria's office. Sport Nigeria is a limited by guarantee intervention organization that was essentially set up by the private sector to act as an aggregator of funds, a facilitator of the deployment of those funds into the development of infrastructure, sports infrastructure and facilities, especially at community level, and an enabler of a viable sports industry, community-driven sports industry in Nigeria. So in that capacity, I drive all the initiatives towards aggregating both local, domestic, and foreign capital into facilities that would have conducted due diligence, whether they're greenfield or redevelopment of moribund assets, so that we will deploy those assets towards developing a sports industry. Now, Sports Nigeria's flagship program is Spaces for Sport. And Spaces for Sport is our market development strategy for growing a market for goods and services in communities by deploying community sports facilities for the use of that community to promote mass participation in sports and thereby encourage demand for goods and services. In the belief that if we create that demand, then commercial impact projects will follow Spaces for Sport into communities and service that demand. So it's using infrastructure to drive demand for goods and services, and then creating an industry by servicing that demand, especially from commercially minded organizations. So that's one hat. My previous hat before Sport Nigeria, which I still wear, is as the thematic lead of the sports industry thematic group of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And it is as part of the sports industry thematic group that we were able to do all the work, the background work that came from, that led to the National Sports Industry Policy. Over a period of 5 years, we engaged with over 800 people, and we were able to finally come up with the sports industry policy that is actually based on sports as business, in the belief that if sports is treated like business, it could deliver both social impact and commercial impact in a more sustainable, viable way. So the sports industry policy of Nigeria is actually the first attempt at having a sports industry policy in Africa, and we're hoping others will be able to copy or emulate. If we can implement it properly, it will be something that can be replicated across Africa. So once we got that policy sorted, we're in the stage right now of ensuring the policy was actually based on the concept of what we call the 3 I's and 1 P. The 3 I's and 1 P is incentives-backed infrastructure as a tool for the development of the sports industry, and it is driven by a fit-for-purpose policy. So the aspect that concerns the public sector is the policy and the incentives, while the private sector is supposed to now leverage the policy, leverage the incentives provided to actually now bring in the investment required to deploy infrastructure as the basis developing the policy. When we did the work, we figured we would need $500 million every year in investment over a 10-year period to be able to deliver an annual 2 trillion naira. At that time, 2 trillion was about $400 billion. Yeah, but 2 trillion now is about 200 collapse. So, but at that time, we were looking at it and that we could deliver annually 2 trillion. The government could earn about 150 billion in taxes. We'll be able to deploy 3,000 community-based S4S facilities over a 10-year period. And we would see 200 new stadiums in a 10-year period just to be able to catch up to this stadium to population ratio of 1 to 1 million. We are currently at 1 to 5 million. South Africa is at 1 to 700,000. Great Britain and the US are 1 to 300,000, 350 or thereabouts. According to the UN, they say ideal is 1 to 300,000. So you can imagine how far back we are. We are at 1 to 5 million. We need 200 new ones just to catch up to 1 to 1 million. So as SITG thematic lead, we were responsible for driving the process of first getting the policy. We have sorted out also the incentives package. One of the last things the Buhari government did was to set up a FEC committee made up of Minister of Youth and Sports, Sunday Dari, and the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, and ask them to chair the incentives committee. We were able to come up with a basket of incentives that included VAT waivers, duty waivers, some 3 years, some 2 years, and different categories. We worked with customs, worked with CBN, worked with Ministry of Finance, worked with Ministry of Trade and Industry, and got it. So unfortunately, it was really on the eve of the exit of that government. It wasn't approved, but it's now part of what has been presented at the Fiscal Policy Commission, the new Fiscal Policy Commission headed by Taiwo Oyedele. And we are hoping that by the time it finishes its work, the basket of incentives will have been out. So that's the second part. Then 3 months ago, I was appointed the chairperson of the Nigerian Women's Football League, and in that capacity to manage the league for women in Nigeria. Technically, we are responsible for the development of women football in Nigeria, and it's been quite an experience going back to the drawing board, checking, there really wasn't much we met. And so it's almost as if we're building all over again from the scratch. So we got a board, we were able to develop our strategy, Women Football Rising, and the target is to increase the number of girls and women playing football, provide pathways if you didn't want to play, to coach or to referee or to be involved in the media. So developed a capacity development program. We also developed the football and the girl child as our community and social engagement platform, so as to provide young girls with incentives that, to pursue football as a career if they so wanted. And then we set up a couple of funding mechanisms based on an attempt to harness retail funding through the Sisterhood campaign, a group of 8 women coming together, different walks of life, to raise money for one of the projects. They've chosen to raise funds for the capacity development program for coaches and referees. So get more women coaches, more women referees in the next 3 to 4 years. While the he for she is a group of men, 10 men who've come together and decided that they will focus on football and the girl child and be able to raise funds to deploy in the programs concerning football and the girl child in communities. So that's where those are the three hats. And the last hat is that I'm a mother of a 19-year-old. So I think that's the most important hat.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. Maybe you just say something very briefly, then we'll go into some of our questions.
Okay. Yeah. Again.
Sorry.
Okay. Just to share a little about myself as well, just very quickly. I feel so intimidated now because
you're not the only one.
I feel so intimidated.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Exactly. You know,
that was not the point. That was not the point. The point was just...
I know.
I'm only kidding, man. I'm only kidding. Maybe intimidated is not the word. I feel so happy for you and so joyful. We've been engaging quite a number of different industry persons in conversations like this, and I must say that you have come not to disappoint us with your background and with the things that you have done. We feel like we need to put your name as part of what we're doing. We're EduTimes Africa, and we feel like there's a whole lot around sports education that needs to be known as well. What you're doing around sports is what so many people that are in sports are not doing, especially in this part of the world. So you find people who are sportsmen, you find people who are making money, who are agents, who are doing all of those. But in terms of content development work within the sports industry, developing the sports industry as it is, paying attention to the infrastructure, because there is no sport without infrastructure and there is no sport without funding. So paying attention to all of those, we feel so I'm happy that I'm very glad that you're playing in that space. So again, my name is Adebi Oke. I'm co-founder of EduTimes Africa as well, and we're happy to be here with you today. I have a daughter as well who is a gymnast, and
daughters are it.
Exactly, daughters are it. You can say that again. So we thank God for our mothers and we thank God for our daughters. Yes. The women that brought us forth and the women that we have brought forth as well.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you so much, madam.
You're welcome.
I will yield the floor to Dapo now so that we can get started.
Okay. Before I go into our first question, I just want to mention Adebi is also being very modest. His daughter just won a gold and a silver at the national games
National Youth Games.
National Youth Games.
National Youth Games.
Yes, recently.
Congrats.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great that we have. My daughter does esports, so
okay.
she does. Went to Saudi Arabia, last competition in Saudi Arabia, and seriously, until she, so
fantastic.
it's good to see them have all these interests,
Yes,
and congrats to your daughter.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
What a person.
Thank you.
That's right. Okay, Ma. So first question I have, because I have a feeling you've actually answered some of these questions, but what I have is, please tell us how you got into sports. Was it a passion from childhood?
Look, that's going to take so long. Yes, it was. Let me tell you how bad it was. I lived in the Palm Grove area during the war, and regardless of what was happening, we used to play football on the streets. I used to want to be captain. I was one of the, I think, only 2 girls at that time. I always wanted to be captain of Western Germany or Liverpool. So I've been 4 years, and it came from there. I also learned to play table tennis on the streets.
Okay.
With those 2x4 tables. You learn how to
Yes,
smash
yes.
on those tables. Can smash on it. So I learned how to play on the streets. And I also learned, how to fight to stay. Time I've won like 3 or 4. The guys used to get angry. So we would throw down the bat and we rack to see. So I learned to also fight on the streets. So I throw a mean punch right now, and it was from when the habit has never left. So I can throw a physical punch and I can throw a verbal punch. I'm not it. But I had a family. My dad and my mom were sports lovers. My mom used to play netball. Even as we were growing up, they would play in their school. And she would come home with her ankle all sprained and everything. And so those are the memories I remember. My father played tennis, played billiards and all. But he got us interested in sport. So by the time I entered Queen's College, it was easy. Queen's College, that was when I entered Queen's College, the year after they did the All Africa Games. And Queen's College was one of the hostels in 73. So Queen's College was one of the hostels, and they built all these facilities and all. So I played netball, played basketball, I played volleyball, I played tennis, played table tennis. I even represented Lagos State at the Omo Table Tennis Championships. The only thing I didn't do, swim, because I always feel like I'm drowning in the bath. So I don't have a bath, I have a shower. Because any water up to my chest and I'm gasping for breath. But I did anything. I played hockey for 13 years, including playing for Lagos State. I played for Unilag. I played badminton. Then I picked squash in my final year in university, because I kind of felt I'd put on weight. One long holiday like this they gave us, and I had eaten everything. I was abroad. By the time I came back to my final year, I put on weight. Badminton wouldn't do it, so I picked up squash. And I learned how to play squash in my final year. And then I reached up to national #4 and whatever. And then, yes, and I gave up squash my knees. So I don't do anything except walk. But the love for sport was inbred in me. And I served on different associations. I served on the Squash Association, Lagos State. I served on the Squash Federation. I served on the Tennis Association. I served on the Para Soccer Federation. And I owned a Para Soccer club at one time, just to get a feel for. So I've been an athlete, so I know what the problem is being an athlete. I've been an administrator, so I know what. And I've also managed sport from the point of view of marketing and sponsorship. So I understand the complete ecosystem. So going into development was an easy call for me. It was, because I'd seen all the challenges. And so there was nothing that was strange anymore. And what I realized at an early, I realized about 15 years ago, just after the All Africa Games in 2003, which I was instrumental in developing Team Nigeria. I developed the Nigeria concept. But I started realizing that the foundations of the sports industry didn't exist in this country. There was a lot of money changing hands in terms of companies really wanting to use sport for their own business and brand benefits. But there really wasn't it wasn't built on anything. There wasn't any industry. There was just people putting things on media and just generally running around like headless chickens. And by the time it reached 2010, and I had a pretty nasty experience in 2010, based on that nasty experience, I realized that there will be no money in this sector before long. And if you really talk to the people in the sector, they're having issues. Because you see, what we were doing was building our house from the roof, not from the front. foundations.
Yeah.
There was no foundations for a sports business. And what is happening now is the changes in technology have rendered some of the things that people used to use to make money in sports, practically rendered them obsolete.
Yeah.
So what the rest of the world, the countries sporting nations, what they had realized a long time that because you need facilities to play sport, is not like studying. You need facilities. Sport is best played in a sporting facility. You also need a market for goods and services so that the value chain, the component parts of the value chain can thrive. So what most countries did was one to recognize that participatory sports is not the same. That is those you are going to the Olympics, you are going to the World Cup. Those are events created to drive mass to a particular point, drive tourism, drive. The heart of sports is the ability for the average man to be able to play sports at his or her level. So I know I'm never going to represent Nigeria in the Olympics, but I want to be able to go into a nice facility, jog, lift weights, do everything, pay money. So, and I will pay money for it. And I would also buy the equipment, do everything. School children need somewhere to play sport. Most countries insist that schools play sport 2-3 times a week. And what that does is that it creates a market for goods and services. So the merchandise companies supply the facility owners build the facilities. There are coaches, there are trainers, there are, so all of the components of the sports industry, the value chain, we never bothered to interrogate and do that. As I speak to you, there are 100,000 schools in this country. If they came out with a law that any school that has 400 children must have a games master, and any school that has 700 and above must have 2 games masters. Believe me, we will need 200,000 games masters or mistresses in this country. We don't have 10,000. But we're crying about unemployment. But that's an opportunity to employ 200,000 people. But you need to train them. So what happens? Somebody sets up a training center and provides an 18 months, 12 months, 18 months course in games mastership and games mistress with certificated and everything. And suddenly capacity is built. So that interrogation wasn't done. That's the interrogation we did at the NESG. After I wrote, myself and a group of people wrote a blueprint, a framework for industrialization of sport, because you must industrialize before you can reap these benefits. So today I can have a conversation with you for 10 hours and I will not talk about the Olympics, we'll talk about the World Cup, we'll talk about it. Because you see, that's end product. That's 20% we all see. The 80% Nigeria did not do the work. And now we have to do the work. So the next big thing is the sports industry. And so that's where we are now. That's why the focus was on this, getting an industry policy. A lot of people argued when we're saying it was sports industry policy. Now, why isn't it just a sports policy? I said, no, we've had sports policies. They focused on we've got talent. Anytime you talk to any sports person, what is he talking? Talent, discovery, and management. To be quite honest with you, I have absolutely no interest in talent discovery and management because the talent is just on the ground there. we will always have 22 people who will suit up and represent us at the World Cup. We've got 200 million people. So 22 people will always come out. But here's the situation we have now in this country. We've got only 77, according to KPMG, only 77 people are players are playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe. 77 Nigerians.
77.
Yet only 77. Yet in the third tier of our league, men's league system, I have 25,000 players there. How are you going to ensure those ones earn a living? The South Africans don't send any players outside. They built an ecosystem. Their players live large. Their players drive the best cars, live in best apartments, everything, because they have built an ecosystem that enables them to consume what they. Our league has no TV. Our players, they pay today, they don't pay tomorrow, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we are trying to get people to turn back. The domestic demand for goods and services is critical to building the industry. That the minister, Sunday Dare, pushed for the recategorization of sports as business and started this whole process. So that's it in a nutshell.
Madam, thank you very much for that. There's something I want to ask you, because we're going to sort of, you've touched a lot of questions that we're going to ask, so we don't actually need to ask quite a few questions, but there's one question I want to ask as well. Our private sector are very good at taking up people as brand ambassadors after they have won the gold at the Olympics already, after they've already broken the world record. When our private sector going to start looking out for talent who haven't made it yet, who they can sponsor? Because that is what is happening abroad.
That's not what's happening abroad. That's not what is happening abroad.
Okay.
The discovery of talent is done by federations.
Yeah.
And the sports associations at local government or county level or council level. I said the private sector is not their business. When you have a company set up for profit, except it is a business that is set up to do sports, it's not their business to help you to look for talent. You look for the talent and get the talent up to a point. And that point is creating the events that are marketable and can be utilized by the private sector to drive their own business and brand benefits. Their business is not to help you find talent. Their business is to leverage what you have, and which is why we keep encouraging federations, leagues and all. That's why you have leagues and all. They create the environment to bring the private sector in. Unfortunately for us, we have never focused on building the ecosystem. So we have never focused on providing the incentives. I remember I fought for tax breaks for private sector in 2003 when I did Team Nigeria. And I was fortunate that the chairman of the FIRS then was an old schoolmate, Ifeko Omoigui. And she granted those tax breaks for those who invest. But outside of that, nothing has been done, except now that there is a policy that has actually put out government statement of intent. And so the private sector is now looking and saying, wait a minute, there are 10 key policy thrust areas. If you read that policy, chapter 5 is nothing but business. And in it, we made it clear, the way it was designed, we removed responsibility from federal government and took it back to where people live, the states and local governments. So in terms of provision of land, the states, by law in this country, land resides in the states. So now land for things like community facilities and all reside with the states. So the private sector can now go build facilities, build training centers. People pay for training centers. We don't have any. We have only one. We have nothing. The federal government has sports assets, some not even built, some halfway built, and all of that. So, what do you expect the private sector to do?
Yeah.
We focus too much on talent. We focus too much on talent to the detriment of all the other, as I explained, all the other parts of the sports industry value chain. It's time to focus on the value chain. How do we create jobs? How do we create jobs such that athlete development becomes a seamless process?
Yeah.
How do we go from raw talent to finished product in a structured manner? The same way, Jamaica will tell you which athlete will represent them in the next 2-3 Olympics. They can tell you today, they found the 12-year-old. They can tell you which you put the 100 meters line up at the Olympics. You can say who will be there. 2 Jamaicans are probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we say that? Kenya, we and Kenya have been going to the Olympics from the same year, 1956 or thereabouts. Kenya now has 100 and something medals, half of which is gold.
Yeah.
And we have 23. We've sent the same number of athletes. So in terms of participation, we are not there. In terms of facilities, we're not there. These were all the issues. How am I going to make money?
Yeah.
Where is the source of revenue?
Yeah.
Is it in merchandising?
Yeah.
Is it in look, I don't want to give you the stats for merchandising. 80% of the merchandise that is this country is imported. There's such a huge pressure on. It's a wonder the Naira is still managing to stand. It should have totally collapsed. Let me give you one example that we used in the 6 years. One of the very first examples. What if we said we got the government to pass the law? All children must play sports 3 times a week. Let me even say 2 times a week. Yeah. When they are coming, they must wear shirts, shorts, boots, bring a ball to the sports center. First, you see that ball part. There's no factory making balls in Nigeria. So there will have been a huge sucking sound of more FX to China.
Yeah.
And Aba is there.
Yeah.
So you see, sorry, for me, I have very little interest in the athlete getting. It's good for soft power. It's good for soft outputs going. But the real thing is, how do we get 3 to 5 million people employed because there's a viable, sustainable sports industry?
Yes, yes, yes. I truly agree with you.
Athletes make up only 1%. Athletes make up only 1% of this 3 to 5 million.
Just 1% out of that, really?
Yes, but we're focused on every single penny
on them
we've had in this country.
Okay, thank you, man. I've learned. Hey, we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. I want.
No, but we're not going to take that long to catch up.
Really?
Oh, the one thing I know about us, we won't. Look at telecom.
Yes.
We were using not 9 North and everything.
True.
And it just one thing. 20 years later, we have caught up with everybody else in the world.
You're right. I should agree with
10 years. We give it 10 years, we'll catch up. We have some of the best talents. We have we have the DNA in terms of talent. That's talent discovery is not our problem. It's the ecosystem to support that talent.
Yes.
That's our problem.
You're totally right. Because I'll just say something here. I mean, it's part of the. I schooled in England. I went to my schools, all my schools in England, and a lot of the best athletes. I played rugby. I was also a sprinter. I was a long jumper. I did played a lot of sports, and a lot of the sports, most talented sports people in England when I was there were Nigerians. You know, so when I was playing against all sports and I see another black guy, I say, this is another Nigerian. No. You know that you know, the Nigerians are usually one of their best players in the teams. But then you come back and look at Nigeria and we're nowhere to be found. You know, we're nowhere to be found. So it's quite a sad thing.
So,
okay, man.
So here's the thought.
Yes. Okay.
No, here's the thought. Go on.
No, please go continue.
Do the granular work, because it's not sexy work, I can tell you.
Yeah.
And it's hard graft. It's hard graft, talking to people, trying to convince them. You know, Nigerians are a well-traveled lot, but they're also not. They can be superficial.
Yeah.
What they're saying. So people go to the Olympics, they go to the World Cup, it's the process of getting there. Why is it so successful? Why is this? Why is that? The whys, we don't ask the whys. Because we don't, you know, I delivered a lecture the other day in a tourism conference on sports tourism. And all I did was deconstruct what Rwanda did and what Dubai did. I said, if you can deconstruct it, you can put it back together for you.
Yeah.
Deconstruct. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's
just requires the will.
Because what did they do? Yeah. What did they do? So we need to begin to let it was not a group of us just decided that if we intend to make money in this sector, we might as well do the hard work, do the graph, at least get the policy. And so the policies are, and the incentives have been designed. Now the job of getting the private sector to understand that now investment can come in, you need to show them the numbers. And so Sport Nigeria is taking the lead in that. We work with technical advisory partners, some of the biggest law firms, some of the KPMG was working with us and all. So in terms of advisory services, and we're now beginning to talk to states. We're in conversations with about 16 states, and we're saying to them, we'll come into your state, we'll put community facilities, and the commercial impact people will follow us into your state, I'm sure. But you need your state, choose how you want your state to leverage.
Yes.
Sport, whether you want to be a manufacturer or you want to choose what applies. Do you want long distance? Do you want that? And then we now follow your guidance and lead you to a path, we hope, down a path to deliver results. Yes.
Fantastic. What have you been getting good reception from states that you have spoken to?
Oh yes, certainly. The only thing that dragged us back a bit was the election. So the focus changed. Everybody seems to be settling down. And so we had reached out to about 16 of them. The responses are coming back, and we have a few presentations, few meetings with the governors over the next few weeks. And so by January, a few major announcements will happen.
Fantastic. Good. So people are starting to see Nigeria sports as a business, which is the way.
Yes, it's not only about Olympics, World Cup, Commonwealth Games.
Wow, the network is not helpful.
It's not good out there at all. I think she's touched pretty much most of the.
Those are end products. That's the 20% of.
Yes.
Well, let's get going.
We're nearing the end anyway. I have
No
just two more questions to ask you, madam.
No
First
problem.
is, we're an education-based magazine. We do talk about sports as well, but we trying to link sports and education and values. Now, the question I have here is, do you see sports as a critical component of education? If yes, why?
It certainly is. I have a very broad outlook on life. And it came from playing sports, whether team sport or individual. Look, when you are part of a team, the values of sport get that, that you imbibe from playing sport can take you through life. And it's best got when you are in school. Because when you don't have anything, when you all are just starting out, there's no one, pardon my expression, when all of you are piecing in the gutter together, nobody is more than the other.
Yeah.
That's when you know
of course.
You know who can get your back in anything. You learn trust, because you have to put your trust in teammates to win a game. You learn the value of teamwork, strategy, that without Mr. Especially in team sports, without Mr. A doing his part, you are not going to be able to do your part. You learn perseverance, because you can train and train and train, and then you race today, you don't make the cut. But you've got to go back the next day and keep training. And so you learn perseverance, you learn consistency, you learn trust, you learn how to depend on your teammates and how they can depend on you. It's like what they say in the army. You learn that you will die if your teammate doesn't, if your colleague doesn't do what he's supposed to do. So when you get out into the real life, it begins to teach you how to assess people. Sport is one of the most critical, and of course, you learn how to keep fit. You learn how to that's a side effect, but it's the intrinsic values of sports that you learn when you are in school that takes you through life. You know how to keep friendships. Because sports teaches you about comradeship, of friendship, about togetherness. It teaches you those things. And it teaches you how to lose with dignity, how to lose. Because one thing that I find these days, people don't know how to. It's a zero-sum game for people in a lot of things. But when you're a sports person, it's not a zero-sum game.
That's right.
Because there's always tomorrow to play again. If you lost today, there's a chance tomorrow. You climb up a ladder. You learn how to climb up a ladder when you are when you play sport. And some of the friends I have today, the longest friends I have, are people I made friends I made with sport. So, for me, every child, I had my way, and we're working towards it. Every child must play sport at least twice a week. I played team sport, I played individual sport, and I know the advantages. So yes, the short answer to that is yes, certainly. I believe that sports is a critical part of education. UN happens to think so too. So UN happens to think so. It can't be all. It must be good for us.
Fantastic. We're in one mind in that aspect completely. I think our children should be playing sports regularly. Like you said, it teaches so many things. Many things. Thank you so much, man. And that's going to bring us to our last question.
Too many things.
Which is, what does success look like to Madam Nkechi Obi?
Okay, so every year I have, I would say this has been a successful year. So when I started this journey, my first year was an acceptance of the framework that this is how sports should be restructured. That took 5 years before we got that acceptance. And only happened when a friend introduced me to Nigerian Economic Summit Group formally. I've been to one or two of the events, this Economic Summit, but formally as people, an organization who could drive this process. When we wrote the framework, we needed an A-list person organization to drive it. I spent the first 5 years looking for an A-list person. I don't want to tell you all the people I went, but a lot of them now are coming back and saying so. But we found the A-list person, the A-list organization. So success for me, in terms of the framework, was getting NESG on board. Now, between when we got them on board in 2016, success was each year getting on board their track. So their track you are taking on as part of a thematic group. So we got on board that. They are taking on as your thematic group now gets a focus group forum and gets a breakout session at the Economic Summit. We got that in 2017. Then you get another breakout session, so stakeholder engagement. So 2018 we got that. So I think that we are now well on this track. By 2019, success became about getting a group of people to back us in terms of a handful of 8 people to back us, to put us in front of key stakeholders to get what we want. That was done. I got the eminent group. Then success became, by the end of 2019, the Interministerial Technical Conference, because this was part of a blueprint. So each time one thing was done, I ticked it off. Each time one thing was done, I ticked it off. I had the blueprint. The NESG didn't have the whole 100% of it. They only got the 100% of it in 2020 after we had finished. And that's when they saw that this was a plan that had been 10 years in the making. So in 2019, the Interministerial Technical Session brought 10 ministries that had a role to play in sports. That for me was success, because arising from that, we got the industry working. And then the biggest success was getting the Ministry of Youth and Sports to sign an MOU, Nigerian Economic Summit Group, to drive the process of industrialization of sport. That was huge. And that's what led to the policy. When the drafting of the policy in 2020, despite COVID, was a success. In 2022, the past last year, the approval of the policy was the biggest thing. Sport Nigeria being set up in 2021 and launched 2022 was another success. So for me now, I look at 2023 and getting 2 or 3 states on board by December would be success. But next year, our target next year is for success is that the first Sports Africa Investment Summit holds. And there, at least, we can now say, yes. Once that holds and is scheduled for October next year, I can say my work is done. And I can sit back. So that's, that's how I measure success.
Fantastic.
Climbing the ladder.
And EduTimes will be there in October next year.
That's what I was going to say. You took the words out of my mouth. That's right. I hope we'll be invited to that summit.
I'll tell you, in January, the announcement will be made. In January, the announcement will be it's an Africa-wide event. So
fantastic.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, we look forward to that.
Yes.
We look forward to that. Madam, you're doing a fantastic job.
When we were reading your profile, we were reading everything that you've done, and we were preparing for this conversation. My mind always flies back to National Stadium, both in Abuja and in Lagos. I've been privileged to go around both stadiums. My daughter trains at the National Stadium in Abuja here 4 or 5 times every week. and I see the dilapidated states of the stadium. And the truth is that we can't afford to build that stadium today. The state of our economy, we cannot afford.
You don't need it. That stadium should never have been built there. It should never. Because you see, it's built in a place where traffic goes away from the stadium at the time when it should be hosting events.
Yes.
Yes, that stadium, the funding for that stadium was supposed to have been used to build stadiums in all the communities. Gwagwalada. Because look at how stadiums are built. Stadiums are at the heart of new town development. The stadium is never on the outskirts of anywhere. It's inside living. You must come out of your house and enter the stadium. It's only here we go and build the stadium one. Onikon Stadium is not even the most appropriate stadium. Teslim is the stadium, and what's the name? Agege Stadium. Those are the two stadiums that are actually built where they're supposed to be built. So if I were to be, we refuse, in the course of our work, we refuse to focus on the federal government owned stadiums, because the federal government only owns 4 stadiums. We have only 47 stadiums that are 22,000 capacity and above.
Really?
Only 47. Yes. That's why we have a 1 to 5 million ratio. We need 200 new stadiums. Some of them should be 15,000, 10,000, with room to expand, and they should be built in communities.
That's right.
And that's how you use them.
If I can take further what you just said now, just a couple of days back, I understand I read somewhere the president approving quite a number of new universities. So in my mind, based on what you're saying now, these stadiums that are supposed to be built in communities now would have been universities for some young people.
They should be built in universities. Our universities are a disgrace. No university has a 5,000 capacity stadium. No. But
my goodness.
None. But University of Notre Dame has 77,000 capacity.
Wow.
So our university should actually build the 5,000-10,000 capacity and then monetize it. Within the community there are schools. If in your community school, sports day, wait, by January you will see what will start happening with sports day. In Lagos, there's only 1 stadium functioning now, Ms. Onikom. 22 million people. 1 stadium.
1 stadium. That's terrible.
And Onikom is less than 5,000.
My goodness.
Agege is less than 5,000. Only Taslim is. When I told you what it took to get to this point.
It's no chance for you. I can imagine.